What is going on? Matt Savoca here from Awesemo.com, and we are here on the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel talking a little Dynasty Fantasy Football today. And we are in the thick of rookie draft season. You are likely either starting one or have started one. And so we wanted to give our take on a one quarterback rookie mock draft. Really exciting here. We're going to go through 2 rounds in depth and talk about some players that are on our radars for rounds 3 and 4. But it'll get you started with what we think the best value is out there. A really exciting fantasy relevant first round means that rookie drafts are going to have a lot of jockeying for position, a lot of big tiers, and then a lot of big drop-offs. I'm here with my buddy Nick Lepri. Follow him at Notorious Fantasy. Nick, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm very interested to see how we are going to do this draft here because it's pretty interesting how different the thoughts are on players. It seems like every year it's kind of like a nice mold. Like everyone kind of has the same top 10, top 12, but this year with a class that isn't as quote unquote loaded as the past, it definitely has a lot more discrepancy in terms of how people have players ranked, which makes the draft way more exciting in my opinion.
Absolutely. Within tiers, we're seeing a huge differentiation in rankings and projections if you're looking long term versus short term. And another thing that kind of complicates things is usually we have positional value to worry about, right? We got a couple of great quarterbacks, a big tight end. That's what we've had the last few years. This time around, we've got one quarterback, likely maximum 2 who are going to go in the top 24 of your 1 QB drafts, and a maximum of 1 tight end in the top 24. So really, we're talking about wide receiver or running back, the flex positions that run fantasy football. So positional value for most teams not going to come into consideration here for most squads. Again, every squad is a little bit different. I know you did a video about win now versus rebuilding teams and some strategies there, so definitely check out the other videos on our channel to help you with some strategic choices there. But I think we can get into the action here as we start over on sleeper.com. Thank you for helping us out and getting us ready here, Nick. And we are going to start. You can have the 101. Now, I think there's a pretty big consensus here. Things get exciting after that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the number one is basically chalk. Now, again, I did kind of talk about how it's not necessarily chalk this year across the whole draft, but at number one, even in a 2 quarterback league or a super flex league, normally in those kind of leagues, this is a 1 quarterback draft, but normally there's a quarterback number one. Last year, Trevor Lawrence in a lot of leagues, but here we are doing a running back, and that is going to be Brees Hall, running back of the New York Jumbo Jets. In college at Iowa State, he had back-to-back 1,400 rushing yard seasons with over 20 touchdowns last year, 2021, 12 games, 253 rushes, 1,472 rushing yards, 23 total touchdowns, and 36 receptions for 302 receiving yards. This is a situation that to me isn't amazing with the Jets, but I do think a couple years down the line, we'll be very excited about what the Jets have to offer. Will they be some premier team in the NFL? Probably not, but they will be exciting in terms of fantasy football. And I think that while Michael Carter is there, Brees Hall will be getting a lot of the rushing opportunities, but I do think Michael Carter is going to kind of eat into his receiving value. Think of this kind of like a situation with Jonathan Taylor and Naheem Hines early on, where I think that Jonathan Taylor's value was kind of getting sucked up by Naheem Hines taking a lot of those receiving targets.
Yeah, I think that there is some concern that Brees Hall doesn't get the keys to the backfield right away in New York, but I think talent will ultimately win out. Draft capital is significantly higher for Hall than it was for Michael Carter. And Michael Carter was a fine prospect coming out of North Carolina, but Brees Hall is on a completely different level talent-wise. The closest we have to a Dalvin Cook or the premier second-round back type we have in this draft class, ironically, because Cook has a brother, of course, in this class. Brees Hall is by far the best running back talent, especially when you factor in draft position, landing spot. It's really no question for me. Especially you'll see that I think Kenneth Walker is a player who you might be hurt in the first few years. Maybe his talent wins out, but ultimately for a player who doesn't catch passes and the landing spot for a team with Drew Lock and Geno Smith, Brees Hall is by far the 101, no question about it. Now, let's move to that 102. I'm not going Walker at all. I'm starting the predicted run on wide receivers because we had a ton of them in the top half of the first round. Treylon Burks is my pick at the 102 here. Look, Tennessee is still absolutely in win now mode with Ryan Tannehill in a huge contract season with this team. He is probably not coming back. Derrick Henry also probably in the last season of elite effectiveness. And then you got Robert Woods essentially trying to replace Julio Jones one for one. Unfortunately, we haven't actually seen Robert Woods be effective for fantasy anywhere outside of Los Angeles, outside of that Sean McVay scheme. He was not a quality fantasy start when he was with Buffalo. Do I hope that Tennessee, Ryan Tannehill, can make him fantasy useful? Absolutely. But Traylon Burks, talk about a player who is going to get the keys to his team's one side of the field. He absolutely is. I think he's going to be running basically all of the team's routes, all of the team's passing routes he'll be in on right from the get. And just talk about the physical specimen he is, 6'2", 224, and he had a ridiculous 86th percentile speed score. Traylon Burks is my favorite wide receiver in this draft when you consider landing spot.
Yeah, it's very funny how they draft him, and the instant comp to Treylon Burks is AJ Brown, who they replaced AJ Brown with. So that's very funny. I do think that there is definitely some debate on who the wide receiver one is. Like you said earlier on, it seems like everyone's all in on Brees Hall as the running back one. Wide receiver one, there's definitely some debate. My pick will be the guy who I would have taken in your spot, but again, it is kind of splitting hairs. I think that Burks is in an excellent situation to see a shit ton of targets early on. Now, he is in a run heavy system, so it's not like he's going to be seeing 13 targets a game or something ridiculous like Amon-Ra St. Brown at the end of last season for Detroit. But I do like the situation for him, and I think it would be hard to see him not succeed in my book.
Agreed. What's your third pick here? Where are you going?
All right, so with my third pick here, my second pick, the third pick in the draft, we're going to go with Drake London, wide receiver of the Atlanta Falcons. Very funny that they drafted him because last year they drafted Kyle Pitts in the first round, and the only time he actually scored a touchdown last year was in London. That was a terrible joke, but with that said, Drake London should be the wide receiver one in Atlanta, no doubt. They lose Calvin Ridley, which obviously is going to be a very tough
Would
scene
you
for
bet
the
on
team.
that? Would you bet on that? Sorry, it's another
Yeah,
bad joke. Sorry.
another bad joke. Jeez, we're on a roll here. So three 3 years at USC. He had his true breakout season in 2021. 20 years old. Only played in 8 games prior to his injury, but this is no ACL tear. Even ACL tears now with the modern medicine aren't as concerning. But this wasn't something super serious. 88 receptions, 124 targets, 1,000+ yards, 7 touchdowns, 24.80% target share. Who else is Marcus Mariota going to throw the ball to? If I'm being honest with you, besides him and Kyle Pitts, they have other wide receivers that are names that you probably drafted in the 18th round of your long draft a couple years ago that never ended up panning out. They've got Mariota.
Put some respect on Alamati Zacchaeus' name.
Oh, I will not. He absolutely destroyed me last year against the Jets in London. But Desmond Ridder could be the guy. He says that he's going to win a Super Bowl in Atlanta. Matt Ryan said the same thing. So I'm kind of concerned about the situation there. But at the end of the day, he is the number one guy. He's going to get force fed. And the situation should get better realistically. If they suck this year, they could easily draft a quarterback in the first round next year. So I like Drake London a ton.
That's a good point. There's going to be at least 5 quarterbacks looking like they're going to be drafted in the first round next year. That's a good point. And it's probably time to take Kenneth Walker if I'm looking for, bell cow running backs. They rule fantasy still, even in 2022. But you can't make me. If you're asking me from an upside standpoint, who do I think is the best player available still on the board? It's Garrett Wilson. He's got the draft capital to prove it. The 10th overall pick, ran a 4.38 40 at 6 foot, 184 pounds, an upper percentile wingspan, even considering the fact that he's just 6 foot, 184, upper percentile yards per reception, and he even had a 26% target share on a loaded Ohio State offense. If you're commanding targets on an NFL caliber receiving core in college, I'm interested. I know Elijah Moore is a favorite of many, but Garrett Wilson is my next pick. The NFL draft agreed.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out for the team. Is it going to be a 1-2 situation with Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson? Who's going to be the one? Who's going to be the two? Or is it going to be one of those teams where it's like a 1A, 1B type of scenario where there isn't necessarily one guy that is just the clear alpha target in this offense? I like Garrett Wilson a ton. I don't love the Jets. So I'll say it a million times, but I do think that at the end of the day, this is probably where I would have gone at your pick. And speaking of picks, I'm up on the board here, and I'm going to go with Chris Olave, wide receiver of the New Orleans Saints. Now, the Saints are one of the more interesting teams in my book because the team that we're talking about right now in 2022 will probably be drastically different in a couple of years. Who knows the health situation of a guy like Michael Thomas? If Michael Thomas does end up staying healthy, he's good to go for week number 1. He plays for the next couple of years for the Saints. Then maybe this is a swing and a miss because then Chris Olave to me is just locked in as the number 2. Michael Thomas just commands so many targets. In 2021, Chris Olave at The Ohio State University, teammates of Garrett Wilson, he played in 12 games, 65 receptions, 103 targets, 936 receiving yards, 13 touchdowns, a 20.85% target share. Like you stated, when you have this high target share in an offense like The Ohio State University, that means a lot to me. So I like Chris Olave. Not in love with the landing spot, but I still think he could make some solid noise in year 1 as well as going forward.
Oh, he can make some noise. Jameis Winston has turned wide receivers into immediate fantasy factors. He
Yeah.
can absolutely be considered in underdog fantasy drafts. We don't know what the consideration for Michael Thomas's health is. So I'm actually in on Olave as one of the best performing rookies. If you're just looking at year 1 projections, they're going to be in shootouts with teams like Tampa Bay. They play in a pretty soft NFC South outside of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Olave could have a huge year 1 like another Ohio State alum, his teammate Michael Thomas.
Yes,
All
sir.
right.
So you can go.
Yeah. Man, I think it's time probably. Even though Seattle is a mess at the quarterback position, take Kenneth Walker off the board. Put some respect on his name. The man still ran a 4.38 40 at 5'9", 211. A bulldozer with the ball in his hands out of Michigan State. Played quintessential Big Ten football. Matt Gajewski, our buddy, knows all about that. And honestly, the really big war on his profile is he just really wasn't used in the passing game. 5.4% college target share is in the lower 30th percentile of all running backs. There have been running backs who were not utilized in the receiving game, but utilized by their team a ton, like Walker was, who then became good receivers in the NFL. The poster child for that, maybe a little before your time, Nick, LaDainian Tomlinson. In fact, on playerprofiler.com, they have LaDainian Tomlinson as the best comp for Kenneth Walker. I think that is a little bullish. But that is certainly the ceiling outcome. That is in the range of outcomes. And I do think after 2022, this backfield is all his.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said right there at the end. I was going to add that in terms of this season, if you're doing an underdog draft, shout out to underdog, then I would be a little bit nervous. But in terms of dynasty fantasy football, you're looking a couple years out. I think he's going to be the clear number 1 running back. Probably not this year. I think Rashad Penny is going to kind of hold it down a little bit, but I think going into 2023 that he will be the lead back. And again, speaking of underdog, they're our sponsor of today's video. Our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, is known for their NFL best ball tournaments. However, Underdog does not stop there. Underdog has plenty of other contests for you guys to compete in, including live draft contests and pick'ems, in which you can make up to 20 times your entry fee. Use promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, or just click the link down below in the video description, and you'll get a first match deposit bonus of up to $100. Please make sure that you guys do get started on Underdog Fantasy today. Again, promo code Awesemo, or just click on the link in the video description. If you don't want to type it in, sometimes where I don't want to type it in either, I just click the link. So promo code Awesemo again, first match deposit bonus up to $100. So I'm back up on the board here. It is now my pick, and this is a pick that is very interesting because based on the picture I saw of this guy when they gave him his jersey, he didn't look very excited to be there. But that is Jameson Williams, wide receiver of the Detroit Lions. He did end up tearing his ACL, but the expected timetable to return for him is as early as July 10th. I am not a doctor, so I'm not going to tell you that that's locked and loaded, but based upon everything that I've read, it seems as though he's going to be good to go. And if it's even later than that, it's early August. So he should be a guy that is playing with the team on week number 1 at Alabama in 2021, 20 years old, 15 games played, 79 receptions, 118 targets, 1,572 yards, 15 touchdowns with a 20.67% target share. He also had 352 special team yards and 2 touchdowns. Who knows if he'll be returning kicks, returning punts in Detroit, but I am very confident in him. I think that the fact that Amon-Ra St. Brown was seeing a crazy target share, he's getting like 12, 13 targets at the end of the season, that is going to get RKO'd by Jameson Williams. I don't necessarily think that that means Amon-Ra St. Brown falls off the edge of the earth. I don't think so. But I do think they're going to see a pretty similar target share, a kind of 1A, 1B scenario. I like Jameson Williams a ton. And if you're looking at it, the Lions have one of the better just overall skill groups in the NFL, besides the
Yeah, they
fact that
kind
their
of do.
quarterback is Jared Goff.
That's the weak spot, right? But, right now, Detroit believes in Jared Goff. If they end up winning the amount of games they won last year, they will be at the top of the draft and in a great position to pick one of those quarterbacks that are expected to go at the top of the draft. There are a ton in that 2023 first round. There is another first round wide receiver still available. I think that would be the obvious pick, but I'm not taking it. We're going with Patrick Mahomes' new toy, Sky Moore. The ceiling is the sky for Sky Moore out of Western Michigan. Broke out as a 20-year-old at Western Michigan. Obviously, not the best competition, and he's not the biggest player, not the most athletic we've ever seen. Just 5'10, 191, a 35th percentile arm length. And I still think that he could be a dominant player. Solid, insanely solid college target share. In fact, he was targeted on almost 40% of his team's passing plays. That's a 99th percentile target share. What that means is the dude was always open. Dude who's always open, plus playing with Patrick Mahomes, sounds like a pretty good match to me. It really is as simple as that. Honestly, at this point in the first round, I am looking at landing spot specifically more than uh, than I would in the early part of the first round. Hey, I really like Jahan Dotson, but I'm not going there.
Yeah, I get that. And I like Sky Moore a ton as well. I think that maybe Juju isn't the answer there. MVS has never really shown too much, right? He's had Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. Who knows if Patrick Mahomes can elevate him to that next level? So I do like him a lot. So I think Sky Moore is very interesting. My pick, we're going to go with the guy you just talked about. That's Jahan Dotson. Now, the situation in Washington is far from ideal. Any team that has Carson Wentz as their starting quarterback, I'm never going to love that guy. But at the end of the day here, will they pay Terry McLaurin? Will they not? You never know with how much money these wide receivers want nowadays. So maybe next season, a couple seasons from now, Jahan Dotson is the number one guy in Washington. At Penn State, this man had a 30% target share last year in 2021. His breakout season was actually 2020, but 2021, we're talking about last season. He had 91 receptions, 146 targets, 1,182 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Penn State isn't this necessarily elite football school right now, but Jahan Dotson was putting up humongous numbers. And I think in Washington, again, this could be a team that drafts a quarterback next year. So I'm not going to put too much weight on the fact that Carson Wentz sucks in my book. But I like Jahan Dotson a lot skill wise. And I think maybe the skill will be able to outweigh the situation in Washington. So
Yeah,
Jahan Dotson has to be a first round pick in my book in
oh,
these drafts.
absolutely. He's absolutely a first round pick. And it's not like Carson Wentz isn't going to take his shots. It's just
Yeah.
some of them are going to result in turnovers. I actually think, in terms of deep shots, McLaurin and Dotson might actually get more deep shots than we think right now. I just don't know the quality of the targets. I don't have much faith in the quality of targets. Absolutely belongs in the first round. But I'm going with that strategy I was talking about. I'm really considering landing spot here. I got to go with Christian Watson. I mean, honestly, if I'm on the board where I picked Sky Moore at pick 8 and you pick Christian Watson instead of Dotson or Moore, I don't think you're crazy at all. Already positive press coming out of Green Bay that the minute Watson got drafted, he's on the phone with Aaron Rodgers. That's a really good sign for them linking up. A 90th percentile college dominator, and talk about a player who does have some physical prowess on the field. 6'4", 208 pounds, and an insane testing process over to the 90th percentile in speed score. Player profile is burst score. His catch radius is ridiculous. His side-to-side agility is upper percentile. It's just not 90th percentile, so it looks less impressive. This could be that dude for Aaron Rodgers over the next few years as he finishes his career in Green Bay.
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible. Me and Gajeski talked yesterday about the wide receivers on the Fantasy Football Channel, and it was funny because he brought up the fact that there's probably a fine chance that we're sitting there in week 1 and Christian Watson is like the number 4 receiver on the team, but there's also probably just as good of a chance as the fact that he's the guy seeing the most targets on the team. So it seems pretty iffy over there in Green Bay. It doesn't seem like they have this crazy set in stone plan. I assume since Aaron Rodgers called up Christian Watson, he likes Christian Watson, so he should be getting the ball. That's the hope. And I definitely think he
Oh,
should be a back end of the first rounder. My pick here, we're going to go with the quarterback again. This isn't a crazy loaded quarterback class, but I do think that when you are in the first round, someone is bound to have needed a quarterback. And I think eventually someone's going to take one. So we're going to go with Kenny Pickett here in his 5th year at Pittsburgh. Took him as many years to graduate college as it took me. So shout out to Kenny Pickett. At Pittsburgh, he had played in 13 games, throwing the rock 497 times, 4,319 passing yards, 42 touchdowns, 7 INTs, 67.20% completion percentage, 97 rushes, 241 yards, and 5 rushing touchdowns. Kenny Pickett isn't Trevor Lawrence as a prospect. He's not Justin Fields as a prospect. But could he be the day one starter in Pittsburgh? Yes. And some teams need that. Your fantasy football dynasty roster may not have this elite quarterback. So pick up Kenny Pickett. He's in a good system in Pittsburgh. And I think that Mike Tomlin will do him right and he will succeed. Not saying he's like a top 5 quarterback in fantasy. He could be, though, a couple years from now.
He's in a position to succeed. Obviously, Kenny Pickett really thrived with that extra year of eligibility due to the COVID year. And
Yeah.
but he was just a 24, 25-year-old beating up on 18, 19-year-olds. That's what you're supposed to do. He did show some athleticism, sort of like Justin Herbert has more athleticism than you think. Kenny Pickett falls into that same category. Still warts on the profile for sure. I think he kind of belongs here at the back end of the first round, right here with someone who is staying in Pittsburgh, his teammate, George Pickens. Yes, I did see that video of him standing at a television looking at him being picked. Yes, I do find that interesting. But I still think he was an absolute freak when on the field. 6'3", 200 pounds, still picked in the second round. And you know how those Steelers do with those mid-round wide receiver selections. They usually knock it out of the ballpark. Honestly, the off-the-field concerns, they're actually, I'm not saying that teams are lying, but he did get in the fights on the field. I get that. And then he was, I guess, in a car where someone was cited for some sort of driving citation. But that doesn't look like the red flags that we've seen in other players. That's just all I'll say there. That's all I'll say there. If you're just putting red flags on a scale of red, this seems lighter red than some others. What do I know about evaluating off the field ability? Still broke out as a 19-year-old. I think this is a player who easily could have been a first rounder if there weren't those swirling concerns. I think he's going to thrive on the outside with Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. And like we said, if there's anywhere where these players can kind of succeed and they can figure it out, is a organization with continuity like Mike Tomlin's Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, that is the end of the first round here. We're going to go a little more rapid here as we go through the second round, just because there's a little more, it's open to interpretation. The tiers get bigger here, but I'm going to go with James Cook. Ended up with a great landing spot going to the Buffalo Bills. Another Georgia player here, the end of the second round. This guy ran a 4.42 40-yard dash, was in the 78th percentile in terms of speed score. That's just weight adjusting the 40-yard dash. He's pretty light for a running back. The Buffalo Bills have already talked about him being more of like a pass-catching, third down type back, like an J.D. McKissick, Isaiah McKenzie type. I hope that's not true. I think ultimately, if he's better than Devin Singletary, which is not impossible, he will get the playing time. I just don't know if that's going to be true, especially year one. Bottom line, though, he's on a team that can score a lot of touchdowns, and running backs that are talented, catch passes, and can score touchdowns. That's where breakout running backs come from.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love James Cook this year. I was hoping he'd be a Miami Dolphin. He's a fan of the Dolphins, as am I, but he didn't end up going there. So he goes to our rival. You hate to see that. So my pick is up here. We're going to go with Alec Pierce. Now, this isn't a wide receiver that was overwhelmingly excited about coming out of college, but I think that the situation here in Indy is really good. We did see Reggie Wayne, who is now the wide receiver coach of the team, say that he sees a little bit of Peyton Manning in Matt Ryan. I don't know what the fuck he was looking at, but at the end of the day, I think Matt Ryan is a huge step up from Carson Wentz. Alec Pierce, 2021, 14 games, 15 receptions, 85 targets, 884 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns, 21.25% target share in a Cincinnati offense that was amazing last year until they went up against Alabama. But Alex Pierce, at the end of the day here, is going to be the number 2 wide receiver, I think, relatively easily. The wide receivers in Indianapolis, aside from Michael Pittman, are far from exciting. So I think Alex Pierce sits in a very solid place in what should be a better offense in my book this year in Indianapolis.
If there is anybody who comes out of this draft and We didn't really know his name on the draft day, but he goes day 2. People get excited about it. Like that Cooper Cup type.
Hmm.
It's Alec Pierce. Basically, these Indianapolis hyper athletic receivers. Paris Campbell fits that mold too. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. Pierce is 6'3", 208, runs a 4.41 40. Super athletic guy. I totally get that pick. Love it. But now we got to start going with these running backs in ambiguous situations because they do have upside. Rashad White, is that how you say it? I really think
Yes, that's how you
one
say it.
big change that we're going to see with Bruce Arians taking a step back and Byron Leftwich going into the offensive coordinator position, we're going to see this less irrational usage of the running back position. Bruce Arians was known to hold grudges. We talked about it all the time. If White is the best talent on the field, he will get opportunity. That is my opinion. He is a pretty athletic dude for 6 feet, 214 pounds. 98th percentile college target share. The dude can catch passes. The heir apparent to Gio Bernard, in my opinion. I like him at the end of underdog drafts, and I like him here in the second round. That Tampa Bay running back position is really wide open after Fournette. He could get some run.
Yeah, you mentioning the fact that Bruce Arians is now gone is like a huge factor into why you would want to have Rashad White. I mean, not last season, but the season prior, he'd go to the podium after the game and be like, "Oh, it's Leonard Fournette's backfield," and then Ronald Jones runs for 150 yards, or obviously he probably never ran for 150 yards, except for that game when he ran for 99 yards on the one rush. But I digress. He was just lying straight to your face about the running back position. I think this year it'll be a little bit easier to actually see what's going to be happening. So I think White is a very interesting pick. As a whole, I'm up here and I'm going to go with John Mechie, the third wide receiver now of the Houston Texans. Junior year at Alabama, 2021, 13 games played, 96 receptions, 133 targets, 1,142 receiving yards, and a 23.29% target share. He also had 8 receiving touchdowns. The belief right now on Mechie is that he will be perfectly healthy and good to go by June right now is what they're saying. Again, not a
Okay.
doctor, but that's what I have read. So if he is healthy by June by these mini camps, then I'm pretty excited about Mechie. Again, the Davis Mills, probably not the guy of the future. So don't put too much weight into the fact that Davis Mills the guy. I actually like Davis Mills, but that's not super important here. Mechie is on Houston. The Houston Texans kind of a dumpster fire right now, but in the future, we could easily see Mechie being the number one guy there. But he is kind of trapped a little bit behind Cooks because Cooks is just bound to get over 1,000 receiving yards.
This year, especially, he's not going anywhere for 2 years. But after that, I hope John Mechie, who has serious upside, can hit. I'll go
Yes.
with his teammate Damian Pierce, who I've seen as I think he's 50 to 1 to win Rookie of the Year. Not an insane play. Marlon Mack, Rex Burkhead are the only other running backs of note in the backfield, and he has very similar draft capital to a player like Marlon Mack. Not a super athletic running back at 5'10, 224, ran a 4.59, just breaks a lot of tackles, plays efficiently, had a really decent college career in Florida, was durable, played 12 games in 3 straight seasons. I
Mhm.
like the player, don't love the situation, but we're going with running backs who can eventually take over a backfield. Hey, let's go with Damian Pierce, fourth round pick, second in the fourth round. So the second pick in day 3.
Yeah, I think Damian Pierce could be the starter week 1 for the Texans. I really do. I think that he would have been the guy that I would have picked here. I took Mechie. I was thinking about it back and forth. Do I want Pierce? Do I want Mechie? I went with Mechie, but I like Damian Pierce a lot. And like I said, don't be surprised at all if this guy's a humongous sleeper on underdog fantasy because even though he's on the Texans, having the number one running back on any team inherently has a lot of value. So I'm up here. We're going to go with Cleveland Browns wide receiver David Bell. Still a little bit worried about this season. How could David Bell play if the quarterback isn't there. Watson's missing a bunch of games, but in the
Sure.
future, Watson's going to be the guy. I'm very excited about David Bell. Aside from Amari Cooper, they have like Anthony Schwartz, Donovan People, use the Schwartz, Donovan Peoples Jones. They have a bunch of random ass names. Like, let's be honest with you, David Bell, realistically, talent wise, should be the number 2 wide receiver on this team. Junior year, Purdue, 11 games played, 93 receptions, 134 targets, 1,286 yards, 6 receiving touchdowns, 23.26% target share in that Purdue offense. The Purdue offense isn't amazing in college. They make better chicken, but I like David Bell a lot here in Cleveland.
broke out as a 19-year-old, played 12 games, 86 receptions, 7 touchdowns, and 1,035 yards. Yeah, that'll work for me, especially if you're catching passes from Deshaun Watson by the end of the season. Still going with running backs with upside here as we round out the middle half of the second round. Tyler Algier is how, I'm not sure you
Got it.
pronounce it very well, but BYU's 4-year starter at the running back position. Actually a 3-year starter, but still, he is a player who just doesn't have a ton of competition. Mike Davis cut from that team. Cordell Patterson had a couple of super efficient weeks, but at the end of the day, we're talking about a 30s plus running back who has never been a bell cow. I know the draft capital isn't there, just 8th pick of the 5th round. Hey, this is where you start to take swings, and some of them miss. But if you are talking about players who have a slight chance of being the number one running back on their team by the end of this season, we're kind of running out of players here. Tyler Algier certainly fits that mold.
Yeah, especially in Atlanta, who they're done with Mike Davis. They could easily see Algier, however you pronounce his name. I'm terrible at pronouncing names. I say Dallas Goddard. People say it's Goddard. They get after me all the time, but I think that he's in a pretty good situation. My pick here is going to be Wan'Dale Robinson. Now, this is a player that did get some pretty high draft capital. He is in a situation that right now very ugly at the wide receiver position. They have Kenny Galladay. They have Kadarius Toney. Lots of talks about Toney leaving. Now Toney's perfectly fine. It's like nothing even fucking happened. So who really knows what's going to be happening there? But this guy was very talented at Kentucky. 13 games played, 144 targets, 1,334 receiving yards. He had 104 receptions, 7 receiving touchdowns, 39.30% target share. So that's like an insane amount. Just basically 40% of the time the ball is thrown, it goes to Wan'Dale Robinson. I think that he could be not necessarily Deebo Samuel because no one's Deebo Samuel, but we could see some rushing upside out of him, especially when Saquon Barkley inevitably goes to the hospital 3 weeks into the season.
Don't
Again,
say
that's no joke.
that.
I'm sorry. I apologize to Saquon Barkley's family who's watching this
they
video,
they
but I
need a
like.
third receiver, but they definitely do. With Galladay on the outside, Toney kind of shifting in and out on the inside. This pick
Hmm.
makes a lot of sense. I actually already have some best ball shares of Robinson. He's kind of he's, I'm not sure what he's going to be. High ceiling, low floor. That's what puts him in this late second round category. As you can see, if you're asking me what you should do strategically this year in the second round of one quarterback drafts, I am pounding the running back position, and I'm continuing here with San Francisco 49ers third round pick, Tyrion Davis Price, 6 foot, 219 pounds, out of LSU, who's had a history over the last 5 to 10 years of pumping out great running backs. Well, some great running backs, I should say. The 40-yard dash was really solid for him, an 82nd percentile 82nd percentile 40-yard dash, and a 90th percentile speed score, all at a BMI of nearly 30. His best season was last year at LSU. Played in 12 games, 1,000 rush yards in 211 rush attempts, 6 touchdowns. Would you like to see him find the end zone more? Would you like to see him catch more passes? Yes and yes. But still, Kyle Shanahan saw something in the third round. They took him. That's enough draft capital and enough talent for me to go with it at the end of the second round.
Yeah, I'm convinced they could have drafted me in the third round and I would have drafted myself onto the 49ers. I mean, that's just an excellent situation to be in with Shanahan. So any running back that goes there could have some juice. I mean,
What if
Elijah
Mike
Mitchell.
McDaniels? What if Mike McDaniels is actually the secret sauce, and now your Miami Dolphins are going to be the best rushing team in the league? I'm not actually
I
believing
hope
that.
so.
But what if it's true?
It
I
is true.
digress.
That's Raheem Mostert's going to rush for 1,500 yards. So it's my pick now. I went with Wan'Dale Robinson last time. We're going with meeting. We're meeting the Robinsons here. Get it? Brian Robinson, running back now of the Washington football team. Now there has been some talk about how he wants to see, or not he, Ron Rivera, Riverboat Ron wants to see this situation as a 1-2 punch with Gibson and Robinson. If you're a Gibson owner in Dynasty, that is bad. But if you draft Robinson in the second round, that could be very good. In 2021, 22 years old at Alabama, 14 games played, 270 rushes, 1,337 rushing yards, 35 receptions, 296 receiving yards, 16 total touchdowns. The Washington football team is far from beyond exciting. But again, here we do have a running back that could eventually take over. I'm not projecting that, but could see a decent amount of use on this team. I know they did bring back JD McKissick after he couldn't decide which team he wanted to go to, but eventually they could just phase him out.
Yeah, that's so true because J.D. McKissick, I believe, almost signed with the Bills, and
Yeah.
then the Bills went out and drafted James Cook as essentially their JD McKissick type. That is a clear type that the Bills believe that they need. But I do think Brian Robinson has a chance to succeed right away in
Mhm.
Washington. Now, I'm going with a player who's going to succeed more, most likely in 2023, when a player who was a first rounder likely walks. I'm talking about Zamir White, who's in Las Vegas. Zamir White played at Georgia. I honestly thought that he might go a little bit higher in the NFL draft. Ends up getting picked at the 17th pick of the fourth round. It's pretty solid physically, 6 feet, 214 pounds, ran a 4.440, a 95th percentile speed score, and a decent burst score, 64th percentile, according to Player Profiler. PlayerProfiler.com broke out as a 20-year-old at Georgia when he played 10 games and ran for 779 rush yards on just 144 attempts. The dude can play. He's not going to get a lot of run to begin with, but I really think Zamir White is that last in this run of mid-round running backs who can make a difference, particularly a season from now.
Yeah, they didn't pick up Josh Jacobs' fifth-year option, so unless they feel like giving that guy the bag, there
Right.
could be some solid Zamir White run in the future. So, final pick of the draft, and then, like Savoca said at the beginning of the video, we're going to sprinkle some action on some other players that could be going a little bit later. I'm going to go with Trey McBride, tight end, the only
Ooh.
tight end in today's video. Now, it is not, you don't necessarily need to draft a tight end in the second round, but I think that he might be a second round talent here in terms of dynasty fantasy football. I don't think he's going to be a huge impact player year one because they do have Zach Ertz, but his numbers at Colorado, Trey McBride, that is, were really solid. 2021, 22 years old, Colorado State. 12 games, 90 receptions, 134 targets. This motherfucker had a 34% target share in the Colorado State offense. Only one touchdown. I'm not someone who's going to just pound on Trey McBride. Only one touchdown right at the NFL level. He might score 12 touchdowns a year or two from now. So Trey McBride is in a very interesting offense. Should be hinged with Kyler Murray. Who knows about DeAndre Hopkins in the future? What's going to be happening? But I think Zach Ertz will eventually be leaving. Zach Ertz did kind of show a little bit of a decline, but somehow in Arizona, he just went balls to the wall last year. So maybe Trey McBride won't have that big of a role this year, but in the future, I like him. He's a very interesting player.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, he had higher draft capital than I expected. I thought he was going to go in the third round. Ends up going in the second to a Cardinals team who, in my opinion, did not crush the draft. If Trey McBride breaks out right away, yeah, that'll tell you that underestimated their draft, and they could certainly use a solid secondary receiver. I know Zach Ertz is going to play a ton of snaps there this year, but
Yeah.
in the years to come, let's see how it goes. Really exciting first two rounds to go through. I'm going to leave you with 5 players I would think about in the third round. Malik Willis certainly could have been that pick right there for me. Isaiah Spiller, who's going to sit behind Austin Eckler for a few years, but has fourth round draft capital, probably the most talented player other than Eckler in that backfield in Los Angeles. Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver, goes to Dallas, a good spot. Pierre Strong, a running back, and picked in the fourth round by New England. And, he's going to compete with players like Ramondre Stevenson, but New England loves to use multiple backs, and Brandon Bolden is gone. There's room for him. And then finally, Pittsburgh actually picked another mid-round wide receiver. In the fourth, they took Calvin Austin, a hyper-athletic player who could make an impact at 5'8", 170, ran a 4.3, 240, has a ridiculously high 90th percentile agility score. Those are 5 players to consider in your second to last and last rounds of dynasty drafts. How about you, Nick?
Yeah, so my 5 guys will begin with Desmond Ritter, quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. Again, they could be so bad this year. They don't even give Ritter a chance. Then they just draft a quarterback, right? So that could be a swing and a miss. But when you're in the third, fourth round of your rookie draft, you're not necessarily expecting Desmond Ritter to be the second coming of Patrick Mahomes or something. So I think in the situation that he is given, maybe he does get some run this year. Maybe he shows enough to where the team wants to commit to him. Matt Corral, quarterback of the Carolina Panthers. The reason why I like him is because I don't like Sam Darnold at all. And I don't see Sam Darnold being the guy all of this year. So they're going to just have to give him a chance unless Baker Mayfield gets cut from the Browns. Then maybe he becomes the quarterback of the Panthers. Tyquan Thornton, pretty fast, goes to the Patriots. The Patriots don't necessarily have this amazing wide receiver core. They bring in Devontae Parker, but could Thornton be that flash in the pan there for New England? Potentially. Sam Howell, quarterback of the Washington football team, would have been funny if they became the Red Wolves and their starting quarterback was Howell. Get it? Howell
Oh, we
Wolf.
just
Very
missed
fucking
out.
funny.
Wow. Wow.
Very funny. So Sam Howell, like Yask last year, holy shit, this guy's the first pick in the draft. No, he's not. He falls all the way down the draft board. But hey, he does still have a decent amount of talent. And Carson Wentz just simply is not the most amazing quarterback in my book. Again, they could completely suck draft a quarterback next year, but again, you're just taking a shot. And then Jeremy Ruckert, tight end of the Jets. Not too sure how he will impact year number one, but that tight end core for the Jets is pretty old. So I think that there's a solid chance that Ruckert goes there. And the video of him getting drafted was pretty cool because he's been a Jets fan his whole life.
That was cool. Like seeing his whole family like completely beside themselves was honestly
Yeah.
the best. You do root for him. If there's one takeaway I have for you in the year 2022, Nick is not into the Washington team, whatever they're called. The Commanders are not his favorite in the NFC East. Nick, this has been a ton of fun. Thanks so much for going through this rookie draft. We are going to be back with a super flex version of this rookie draft too to help you guys out who are still navigating those kinds of drafts, and a ton more dynasty content to come here on the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel. We're going to be doing a startup. We're going to be talking about strategies and tips, some trade options, some tough decisions, a lot here to come on the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel. So make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you always know when we are going live. We will be back next time with all the info you need on the Dynasty side and fantasy football. For Nick Lepri at Notorious Fantasy, I'm Matt Savoca at Draftaholic. We'll see you guys later.